This is episode number 433 of WPwatercooler, WordPress 6.1 for those about to block. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me at Jason Tucker on Twitter.
Say Reed is muted.
And she's muted.
Oh, that was muted? That's so sad.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Wig, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast.
Speaking of podcasts, go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, wherever you're listening to us, and you can come hang out with us over on Discord.
On the Discord.
Link is in the description below.
The cool thing about the Discord is that I don't forget to unmute myself. You know, it's 10 years in, and I know what we're doing. I totally do. I did this awesome ASMR countdown specifically for John.
Oh, really?
J Trip, yes.
Nice.
But, it didn't go through because. Anyway.
Yeah.
Here's 6-point Wonderwall. I used your line. Sorry, I had to. We're doing it, people. It's early. Because usually we do the 6.1 chit chat after it comes out. But I think we were just all feeling a little bit like we've done a lot of like hard topics lately. So we wanted to do something that was a little, just a little slower, maybe just a little easier. Okay, good. I'll keep doing the ASMR. Sorry. I get, you know, if you make a request in the chat, it is
right
given to us directly. So, you know, definitely use it wisely.
So
anyway,
I've heard...
I have lots to say about 6.1.
Yeah.
I did not this morning, but I do now. And who wants to kick it off?
I mean, I've heard folks saying that there isn't a lot to this update, and then
who
if
has
you
said
go,
that they are liars. Oh, that was
you
me.
go look.
They're not informed correctly.
You go look, and 6.1 is chock full of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in
this episode, this release is the release that web developers were like imagining when Gutenberg first came out. Like, I think we're here now. We're like at the thing where web developers were like, this could be like mildly threatening. And then it wasn't at all threatening. It was like, murp, murp. But now I'm looking at it in a kind of different way. And I'm seeing, I mean, obviously anything could be threatening, you know, jobs in tech can be, what's the good word for it? Not obliterated. Not obfuscated.
What was last episode?
No one has this word for me.
No,
Obsoleted?
it's okay.
Obsoleted. That's not a word, but they're made obsolete.
Yeah, we'll just have the computers program in JavaScript, and then we'll just do the PHP part of it, and then we'll be okay.
I was writing my WordPress profile up for some reason, and I went on Web Archive, Wayback Machine to see my first. When I did make my first, I had my very first WordPress website. And in the Wayback Machine, the site, like right before it turns to WordPress, it displays a giant picture that says, Adobe Flash is not supported. I was like, well, that's when I made the switch. It's right there, 2006. There it was.
So you were asking how to start this off. If I had to pick one thing, the one thing is probably going to be the fluid typography. That by far, I think, is going to be the big one for me, is just the simple fact that it's going to just kind of pick the font size that it needs and resize it depending on your small, medium, large, and however it is that you kind of work out all of those sizes and how you're going to go about doing that.
Real quick, I really actively dislike a lot of things, even in UI, but I actively dislike the small, medium, large font picker.
You can name it whatever you want.
I'm just like, oh, that's so annoying. I don't know. Maybe it's like too fast foody or like something. It's just something about it feels, or maybe it's just because it's been so clunky. It's just like, meh. I don't know. Anyway, that's just a personal preference. Especially with the responsive sizes, that will be very helpful.
Yeah, and if you want to play with that, Frost WP, Brian Gardner's went and put that in his Frost WP plugin or theme. So if you want to go check that out, just to kind of play around with it in your your local dev environment, feel free to go play around with that. It's really cool looking, and it'll work really nice if you're running the beta.
Or just do what I do and put everything in production, because nothing matters.
Nothing matters.
I've done that with my my Say Read Media site is now just because it's not even my company anymore. So it's now just there's like old content. I'm just playing with it. So if you go there now, there's just some stuff. I don't even know what's happening with that site at all. But it's like a playground. But I think that I think this is also finally the release where the full site editing and the block, the Gutenberg and full site editing are merged. Have you experienced that at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely getting a little more cohesive.
Right. It doesn't feel as much like two separate things. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, it definitely is starting to feel just more like instead of, I mean, we were just talking about this like a release or two ago. I mean, in 5.9, it was 5.9, right, when they merged, when they finally said, okay, full site editor, it's like supported now.
Yeah.
You know, it's taken us 2 releases, the better part of this past year, to get to a point where it's like, oh, okay, this actually feels like a unified thing, instead of here is this thing that where we edit our posts, and over here you can do site stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe if you want to. I do think it's still it's definitely not seamless. And I was, the most exciting thing for me. I'm sorry, Jason, were you done talking about the fluid typography?
Oh yeah, we're good.
Because I was going to say, I think the most exciting thing for me are the core editor improvements. Here, I'll send this link over that was I have to like go around my microphone. Sorry, was from Anne McCarthy, who is basically been just running the full site editing show for. I would consider them to be the showrunner of full site editing. If that is a good translation, cross industry term for it, because I don't think we have a term for it. I know that they are the editor triage lead this release cycle, but definitely Anne has been leading the full site editing charge. When I was going through this is what I was talking about in terms of, this is what seems to me to be finally actually, because it has now, you can add the fonts, you can add the styles, you can add your spacing and your dimensions and all of that. This is finally equivalent with a page builder, because I still don't think that it was last, even just 6.1, it was just a glorified like tiny MCE a little bit, it was like just a little bit better than that. But this, with the block controls that are here now, it really is nuanced. And you can go, like, if you're doing this from the front end, you can get so detailed. You could change every single little bit of your page. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, this is where the merging with FSE comes in, because obviously these controls are extremely useful to have on your templates, because then you are, if you're, for example, one of these examples they show is styling the social icons. So that makes sense if you're putting your styled social icons in your footer, for example. But I just had this vision of everyone, all of these users, just ignoring the templating part, because it's definitely still confusing. And I don't think that it is super intuitive in terms of just like understanding how they go together. And I understand how templates work, and I still don't find it intuitive. Or maybe that's the problem. Right. I'm not sure. But I think
you can see that there is quite a bit here that's still, left to be done.
Yeah, I don't know which of, are these graphics updated? I don't know if these are dynamic graphics.
No, probably not.
Yeah, but so I think this is from September. So a lot of this might have been. There are so many. They basically put typography and borders and styles into every single block. But this is my question. Like, I really envision, or not my question, but just my concern, I suppose. And maybe it's not a concern, but I envision all of these end users ignoring the whole FSE templating component and just inline styling every detail of the page. And I think that's really interesting from a control perspective. Like, it almost makes each page like the possibility to be an individual work of art, which is very interesting and has a lot of applications. But it definitely turns the whole concept of like CSS and
the cascading of the cascading style sheets.
Yeah, like it turns that whole concept of not doing inline styling on its head. So this is still back to that thing where I still feel like we're like kind of going really retro. Like, is it the MySpecification of WordPress maybe, where you can then like edit every little thing with like your HTML styling?
It's like receding style sheets.
I mean, the
receding style sheets.
The thing that I have always argued for is to let WordPress be a little more weird. So I actually wouldn't mind the MySpecification of WordPress. Like,
I mean, I don't think you're going to avoid it. I think it's going to happen.
Sure.
This is happening.
Sure. And I'm absolutely certain that any designer focused listeners that we have are like, oh no, please no. Like
it's
happening. All of the improvements that have been made to theme JSON. I saw someone frame it the other day about like, well, why don't you just write this as CSS? Like, why are you shoveling everything into JSON to then be converted into CSS? But effectively, like, it is letting you make sort of a style guide for your site, which I think is such like a cool and decent way to go about doing things. But like you said, you have to put the stuff in the right place for that to even work correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have a huge, and I think this will probably see, people will probably see a lot of this on WordPress.com, because that is definitely a more user-centered WordPress base, obviously, like end user centered in terms of like people who are operating their own thing, as opposed to someone who is a developer in between, although of course that exists, but less. So I think, and obviously this is getting fully implemented on .com. So I think we could start to see that innovation. I would love to find out if there's some sort of way to, talking about status or tracking stats or anything. Not that that's controversial, but I would love to see, as this evolves, is there a way to find out who is using the full site editing part of it versus just the front end? And like, is like every page, it's all going to be 2022, but every page is like just individually coded. And then, I mean, I think we're going to get there, and you're going to see the WordPress get weird. Like, it's going to get weird before people realize that the template editor is there and how it works. And that whole process continues to get iterated upon, because it's going to keep getting better. It is getting better. They're making it better all the time. So
yeah,
I think I'm hopeful that, so it's kind of like a two ways. One, I'd like a template editor to get better so that we don't have this time where it's just all inline styling and a bunch of sites get locked into like, just like, I don't, what is that export like? I don't even know.
Yeah. Like, well, a lot of inline stuff, apparently.
I guess you could probably just take all your content out still. I don't know. I have not looked at the export data lately.
Well, and the thing is this is coming out on November 1st, so we'll be doing Dev Branch like that week. So we'll definitely have to talk about some of that, more technical sides of it. So you have a little bit to study up on that.
Good. You don't have to have all the answers right this second.
So another one of these things that I'm super interested in is the custom taxonomy terms. I've been playing around with a whole bunch of these different plugins to kind of figure out like what's the best one. And what's funny is I was doing this while I was running like the current build, not the RC build. So I installed the RC build and I'm like, oh, this exists. What? Okay, so I don't need those plugins anymore. All right, cool.
Right.
Slash taxonomy, and I'm good to go.
Like, this release feels like it is. Like, I mean, obviously, all the work that ACF has been doing with blocks and bringing the, custom data into blocks. I have not done a full deep dive into this particular custom taxonomy block, but it does seem to me that this is a way to this would eventually surpass or supplant, I guess you would say, the need for that type of block, because it would just be an inherent query block that you can design and style and pull your custom taxonomy and pull your custom post types and pull your custom fields. And then, I mean, you can make custom fields in WordPress. Like, you can make it. Like, you don't need ACF to make custom fields. Like,
yeah.
So this, like, I keep coming back to, this release feels to me like it is finally showing the disruption that, just to use an industry term, the disruption that was anticipated like 5 years ago when Gutenberg first came out. I think we're seeing that starting in this release, because not that it's going to, totally make web developers or designers obsolete. It's just going to it's really changing how that flow works and how that works, because you have to retool your entire workflow to incorporate different versions of this. Like, I've already, on some hybrid sites that I spend a lot of time pulling things out of the Gutenberg panel. Like, so they're panels, they're no longer meta boxes, they're panels. And, I had to learn how to pull those out so that my clients aren't, setting things, especially when I'm using ACF fields for data input or whatever. So I'm spending a lot of time pulling things out and turning things off. And I think that's
which
interesting.
I imagine you're probably going to like the fact that you can now like do some of those locking elements, so that you're able to lock things down a little bit better, which is going to be pretty nice. I'm looking on Kinsta's write-up that they did for this, and they wrote that lock inside container block with one click, which
you can lock the whole structure. Like, you can lock the whole thing down, as opposed to having to lock individual elements, which is a very pain. It is a pain.
Yeah.
Somewhere around someplace, it is a pain. So that's definitely great.
And that last checkbox is good, or the little whatever that is. You can do apply these to all the child blocks as well. That's ridiculously handy, because it just cascades down.
I wonder if it's possible now. I don't actually know the answer to this question, so if anyone in the audience knows, or if either of you know, it would be great to know, or I'll go look it up afterwards. But are you able to restrict yet blocks by role?
Ooh, I don't know if
are we there yet? Because that's coming. That's coming. If we're locking blocks, then we should be able to say, subscriber, can get into these blocks, and not subscriber, obviously. Subscribers can't do anything. Editors or whatever can get into different things. And then, we're really talking about supplanting a lot of different plugins that have come up. In fact, I actually just saw, I was trying to solve a problem for, I don't remember what it was, but I came across a plugin in the repo that had just been basically obsoleted by a feature they had improved in 6.0. So they were like, well, you can install this plugin if you want, but it's totally moot now. So, that's really interesting. We have all of these. I mean, it's interesting from a legacy debt standpoint that we have all of these plugins that are basically like, well, that is now included in WordPress. So there's no point in developing this further. But then we're talking about, backwards compatibility. How do you switch from some of those existing structures and plugins that you have in place that might be sunsetting, and then over to the new one? So if web developers are looking for work, that would be it's an area I think you might want to get into, like the transitioning of existing plugin structures to the new structure, because it's all the same data in theory.
But does that person go in and start contributing to essentially what they've been, worked out of a job for them, and start contributing more into, because most of these plugins are free, obviously, but like, that person could go and say, you know what, I just want to start. I have all this extra stuff that I was going to write into mine. I'm just going to write this into core now because it's now part of, the type of thing that I'm working into.
I mean, that'd be cool. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think it could happen if we as a community were proactive in addressing this change. I think the split of the the developer camp and the anti-Gutenberg camp, and that just kind of the different feelings about this, it always comes down to feelings with WordPress, is preventing us from having cohesive conversations about this transition. Truly.
Right.
And I know these conversations are absolutely happening. Courtney Robertson is doing so much work over on Learn WP to make sure that the documents are there and that, people have this information to know how to use it. There was a new course that was just published on Learn WP that is like a full course of how to build a block. And I hope we'll be able to have that author on to talk about that at some point. But so I know she's doing a lot of that work, but what about those plugin developers whose stuff is just sunsetted, or the companies that are set up that are just finding, the page builder companies, all of those folks? Like, there are people that work at those companies. There are, there's so many people who use those products. And I think that not talking about that as a community, as an ecosystem comprehensively, and just being like, well, Core's over here doing its thing and the plugins are just going to keep doing their thing over here and try to hope that it works. Like, I feel like we're making a split. We're like splitting ourselves in a weird way. And so like Core is kind of like, we're doing our thing and we're marching along, and everyone else is kind of, I don't know.
No, I get it.
Yeah. Does it feel like that to you guys?
A little bit.
It does, but I think the thing is that Core, the people working on this project need to look at what Divi, Beaver Builder, and all these folks have already done, and watch, if they can, watch the things that they changed and how they changed them as they were going along through their development cycles. Right. Because that right there is going to tell you, like, yeah, just because you can do something doesn't necessarily be the right way to do it. And looking at how some of these other folks have been doing it, and not to say that they're 100% correct, because there's definitely things in Beaver Builder that drive me nuts, but there are things that Gutenberg's years behind, and FSE is definitely years behind.
Yeah, but it has the, I don't know if it's second mover or last mover, or there's like some expression for, because it has the benefit of all of that. It can see the fully developed stages of, and when I say it,
they would have to. That's the thing. Like they should look at that.
I mean, right, I think that they are, to a certain extent. I've seen, it feels like there's similarities there, but honestly, a lot of this is just common sense when you're trying to do a thing. Like, it makes sense to put typography and borders and a border radius. Like, these are just, so I don't feel like a lot of, it's not so much the innovation is happening in terms of features. It's just that innovation is happening in terms of those features being available here. So, because like, I don't think that there's anything in this release that is new on the web. That, not to my knowledge anyway, so it's all just stuff that's getting packed in there. So, and with the amount of stuff that's in 6.1, I think that is exactly part of being able to be kind of last mover, because you can be like, all right, we need all this in here and we need all of this in here. It's like a supermarket sweep. They're just like going down the aisles of the page builder and they're like, we need all these things. No. We need all these things.
Osprey, you're going to say something?
So I really,
where to begin?
Yeah. I really feel like Gutenberg is sort of walking this path that all of its predecessors paved effectively. Like, there were the initial page builders that were out there kind of cutting the trail. The people who came after, I would say, especially like Elementor, sort of paved the road. And now, the big wheels of Gutenberg are just traveling down. Yeah, it's like one of those dump trucks, you know, that are just have like the gigantic wheels, and it's just barreling down the middle of this road. Yeah,
that's actually a great visual. I like see it with a G on it. It's like going down.
Yeah, but I really I am happy that we continue to get these refinements. I appreciate all the work that is being put into this. Yeah, you know what? We're not doing anything that is necessarily unique that sets WordPress apart from any of the other content management systems. My hope is that I'm going to bring it back to Tumblr now that
I was going to talk about Tumblr.
Yeah, now that Gutenberg is in Tumblr as like an experimental editor mode, now that they put Gutenberg into Tumblr, like when do we start getting Tumblr in our Gutenberg? When do we start getting these fun experimental, like you know, when do post formats come back?
That's
like,
all you ever want is post formats.
That's it's like my
Tumblr
one
already. Oh my god.
It
okay,
is,
I have one more thing I want to say before
windmill. It is the windmill that I keep tilting at. I know that this is like I am Don Quixote, and I am just forever going on about post formats. But come on, man.
You know what? Here's the thing. You're gonna get them. They're gonna come back because they were Matt Mullenweg's dream, and he's got Tumblr. And you know, he did say at the at WordCamp US that he envisions Gutenberg being wider spread even than WordPress. So that does tell you a little bit about the trajectory. I do want in the last 2 minutes just to say real quick some things about the folks who were on this release cycle. And there's some really interesting stuff here. Some things didn't get put into the release cycle, like WebP, bit of a controversy about that whole deal. So, you know, go ask some people about that, not me. But I did, you know, there's some great people on this team. Like we said, Anne McCarthy has really been just flying the flag for it this whole time. But I did want to just observe, and we have 2 minutes left. So I did a quick count of the folks on the team and just checked their sponsored status, because I'm always really interested to know of, you know, who is working on this stuff. And Matt Mullenweg, I was going to say a title, but then I was like, I don't have a title to give. Co-founder of WordPress, was the release lead. And, you know, that role is really interesting if you look at it in terms of like Git commits and things like that. But there were 9 automaticians, 9 folks on this team sponsored by Automatic.
Is that
and
it?
There was,
Is that it? 9?
It's not the whole team. There's one from GoDaddy, one from 10up, one from WP Engine. That's Nick Diego, who's been really doing the rounds. He's a core triage editor with Anne. And one from XWP, and then what looks like 4 to 5 independent folks who were sponsored by smaller companies, including Rich Tabor, who Extendify, I think, which you know, so that's really interesting. Just from like these folks, like he's the design lead working on this from a really small company, but there were also 2 other Automatic folks who helped shape the release squad in general. But you know, when we're talking about all the stuff we talked about last week and the week before, and the data, and, you know, we're talking about core development and releases, I think it's really important to look at who is actually on the team, and, you know, how that team gets chosen. That's important as well. But with those numbers, like without Automatic, that wouldn't, like, I don't know what would fill that spot, but that's 9 people who are basically paid full time, and most of them are primarily full time on, well, Matt Mullenweg is not full time on WordPress, but 8 people who are in theory full time on WordPress, who are dedicating their time to this, plus, you know, all the rest of the folks from the other companies. So, you know, it's free, but it's not free. So this was paid for, this work time that went into this release and all the releases is being paid for by companies. That is just something that's, I think, really important to remember, because it isn't just people who are making WordPress. It is people who are sponsored to do that by certain companies. And I'm not making a value judgment on whether that's right or wrong or whatever it is. I'm just pointing it out. That's all.
It's free as in someone else's beer.
It's free as in you're at someone's party and they're giving you beer.
Yep.
And you're not sure if there was a cover charge, but you can't find your wallet.
We'll say thank you very much for that final thought.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Final thoughts.
All right. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us today. Like I said, we will be definitely talking about this next month when we get into Dev Branch and maybe get talking about some of those sorts of things. We'll see how that goes, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye. Go over to WPwatercooler.com/subscribe. Subscribe to us over there. I built a nice little subscribey thing over there, and it's super fun, so go check it out.
Did you build it in Gutenberg?
Lastly, make sure you go over to our LinkedIn and follow us over there. We'd really appreciate it. We would love to be able to stream over there. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you in the Discord.